Now, learning about the soul and the journey of the soul. Today, by the way, today we will dedicate to the journey of the soul and how to remember the journey of the soul. And tomorrow we are going to dedicate to how we can mature or evolve this on this journey, how we can develop. But first, we are in the journey of the soul, and learning about this journey, even hearing about it, is like the most intimate learning about yourself. This is because when we talk about the soul, we speak about our real birth. Our real birth, the first birth that we ever had. Not the many physical births that we experienced, but the very first birth in which we appeared for the first time as a unit of light and self-awareness. Do you remember this point? I'm not sure that you remember, but we can actually remember. At a certain point, we can remember that very point in which we were separated, we were distinguished from an infinite, indivisible light. And we first had the thought, I am. So this was the very first moment. In this sense, we are as a soul, we are completely made of the very same substance. Because it is a sort of a separation, a limitation of the source of infinite light. It limited its light into conscious particles, conscious units. Much before these conscious units appeared within physical forms. So that's very pretty ancient history. And in this sense, the soul is a very unique phenomenon because it is both, it shares the very same nature of the light, but it is also separate. It's also individual. So there is something unique about it, but there is also something completely universal about it. And that's very confusing. It's like the soul has two faces. With one face, it looks at the world of manifestation, at the actual world, and with the other face, it looks at its origin, its source. So this makes the soul a very intriguing meeting point between universality and uniqueness, between divinity and humanity, and so this gives the soul teaching and the soul remembrance a very unique flavor, and you will feel it throughout the weekend. So I'm going to talk about all this journey of the soul first this morning and then in the afternoon. And perhaps while I'm talking, you will have a sort of flashes of remembrance. This is one of the simplest ways to have such a conscious memory, realizing that what I'm describing is not a story or a myth, but actually our very own intimate reality, the story of our own deepest or original birth. There are also other ways to have such a conscious memory, a fully conscious memory, aside from resonance, because resonance is one of the simplest ways. We speak here, we go through this weekend, and something in you resonates strongly with what you're hearing. It's something that completely bypasses the doubting mind, because the doubting mind, and we'll talk about this guy later, the doubting mind cannot believe that at all. So it is a matter of resonance. It is something that goes beneath the mind. There are other ways to remember that are very powerful. One is near-death experiences, which I don't recommend unless it is really necessary. Don't try it at home. But when this happens, often people can be reminded in varying degrees. Some just are able to watch their body from the outside as it is going through an operation. Some begin to travel, begin to move to what we will call here, for the purpose of explanation, the in-between. This gap of complete remembrance that takes place just in between one birth and another, or more accurately, one death and another birth. So there are near-death experiences. There are psychedelic drugs, psychoactive plants that can do that sometimes, and there is also the possibility of past life regression. In my own work, there is a method called the expansion method, in which there is a long list of past life regressions for different purposes. But I will refer to in the afternoon. Sometimes it is the easiest way or the strongest way to bring back, to revive the fully conscious memory of the soul is through spiritual enlightenment. This happens to us continuously throughout during meditations, profound meditations, when we simply begin to remember, and the reality of death begins to become very transparent to us. Of course, we will not use near-death experiences during these 2 days, and or psychoactive plants or past life regression. So what we have here is resonance and enlightenment, meditation. Now, when we talk about the journey of the soul, there are 3 main stages, and these are really 3 main stages because it is a sort of a brief history of the soul. The first stage is the stage of separation. Separation means the time, the point in which I will call it the divine being for the purpose of our explanation. The divine being separated itself, made sort of distinctions within its own self, within its own infinite light. Why did it do it? It obviously did it in order to be able to look through countless eyes and to experience countless experiences. Basically, the journey that it set out to fulfill is the journey of self-realization, just like all of us. But this self-realization is by experiencing countless forms that are actually the very opposite from the indistinguishable light. Because why? Because for the indistinguishable light, there is no way for self-consciousness. Do you understand what I'm saying? How can you be conscious of yourself if you have no separation? There is no distinction at all. There's just infinity. So then it made this limitation, limiting its own light into subtle light forms. First, we can say it was the creation of the soul. Then it was the creation of subtle bodies which are like carriers that can move from one birth to another, and only then there were physical bodies. Now, in this sense, we can say that the journey of the soul is not really your journey. It is the journey of the divine being that just takes place by taking forms, endless forms, countless forms, all this celebration and the play of life. But of course, from another perspective, it is completely your journey, and this is exactly why I said the soul is a sort of a strange in-between phenomena, universal and unique. So this was the first moment, the beginning, the first stage, and then there is the middle stage. The middle stage is where we are obviously right now. That's where we're meeting here, and the middle stage is the process of learning. Now the soul is sent out on a sort of a mission, and what this mission is all about, this I think we're going to talk for 2 days. That's why I will not expand on it. And third stage is the stage of reunification. At a certain point, the soul completes its journey, exhausts all the possibilities of human experience, develops a more intense, the longing to return and to reunite with its own nature becomes much more intense than the longing to experience the human experience. And then it basically becomes absorbed in the universal soul. It no longer feels like distinguishing itself. It has served its purpose actually by ultimately its ultimate purpose by being completely conscious, which is perhaps this is already too complicated, but I will say that anyway. Forget that I said that, okay? By finally fulfilling the ultimate wish of the divine being to know itself, because now there is complete self-realization. So for the soul, the human experience is a sort of an adventure. This is what it is. It's like you are at home, and then you take a bag and you go on a journey or an adventure, And in this sense, we can say that the soul is that part, that unit of the divine being that undergoes the myriad experiences, the different human experiences, or any other forms of life, or life for that matter. There are plenty of forms of life. So the soul is this part that is actually going through the experience, and that we can say brings back home impressions and learning. Just like you would return home and bring back photos, impressions and experiences and what you learned throughout your journey. Remember this relationship between the sunflower and the sun. It's very similar basically to how we experience our own relationship with our parents. Because biologically, in terms of our physical body, we are a continuation of our parents. We are formed by them, and in the same way we are also distinguished. We also have our own journey. So it's a bit this kind of dual feeling. Being one with and being completely independent. Now the thing is that for most souls, especially obviously at the very beginning, the earliest stages of being kicked into the human journey, and we need to understand that the moment of separation is not volitional. It's not something that we decide. We don't get to decide, just like you don't get to decide to be born in a physical body. Or do you remember that you came and told your parents that it is time? Probably not. We are just finding ourselves suddenly separate out of the womb. In the very same way we found ourselves as souls. So at the very beginning is so filled with forgetfulness that we cannot say that we go through a human experience, or we go through the adventure of human experience, because we are the adventure. Do you understand? There is complete association of ourselves and the adventure, where there is no traveler in this sense. We forget ourselves in the experience. Now, because there is at the early stages absolutely no memory outside of the human experience, and there is complete association, it's like this basic thought, I am, that came out from the divine being. It came out, and it now became I am a beggar, I am a king, I am a woman, I am a man. This complete association, together with the complete absence of any remembrance, began the process of reincarnation. Do you understand? This is quite inevitable, because identification becomes the driving force, and with the identification also appears desire. Desire, don't think about it in such a terrible way. But desire, you can say it is the driving force that makes us keep reincarnating. We return and return and return by the sheer power of desire. In this sense, reincarnation is is both positive and negative. It is positive because, of course, it is a divine learning. How can we say that learning is learning of the divine being itself is less than perfect and beautiful? At the same time, it is negative because what begins to move us from one birth to another quite automatically and completely unconsciously is desire. And what is this desire? Is that with every human experience we go through, we feel that there are certain uncompleted elements of the human experience that we still want to experience. It's like we think, oh, I wish I could, I wish I had, I wish I knew, I wish I felt, I wish I experienced, and so on and so on. And these all wishes, they become like seeds for the next incarnation. And it's very beautiful, because we, even though it is often very difficult, we go through sometimes unbelievably hard incarnations. When it comes to the point of rebirth, we forget all the bad stuff. That's the very strange thing. Perhaps it's not so strange. I don't know if it happened to you as humans, not as souls, that you had very difficult relationship, and still when it ends, you have suddenly the longing for the beautiful parts. There were perhaps brief moments of beauty and joy, and this is all you remember. Sometimes this makes it possible for instance, for a mother that went through really, really difficult labor pains to actually wish to give birth once again. All the memory of the labor pains is wiped away, all the difficulty, and only the image of the birth giving, the joy of that moment is remembered. So we have a sort of, we filter out all the difficult memories, and we only remember the pleasures, the beauty, the sunset, the hugs, a caress, the food, taste and fragrance, and so on and so on. And this is basically the cause of desire. We feel that there are incomplete parts in the human experience that call us again and again. Now, this journey is not linear. Sometimes we think of the journey of the soul as if it is a perfect graduation, like in a school, that you go from the first class to second class and so on in a very linear way. So we start forgetful, then we move, we mature, then we complete it. But actually, in the very same way that in our human journey, we experience all the time that our learning is moving very rapidly from one realm to another, right? It is not so orderly. It is not that you now learn about love, and then, I don't know, you learn about letting go or self-fulfillment and so on in an exact order. You keep bouncing from one field of learning to another. In the very same way, the journey simply follows the desire. Near the end of each life, we feel that there are some certain aspects that are incomplete, and then we move on. So I just had something wonderful to say, but I forgot it. I'm joking. So I had to let go of it painfully. So so then there is death. And we died many, many times. At the moment of death, what happens is that we simply take the subtlest body that we have, the subtlest body and the subtlest mind, and with the subtlest body and the subtlest mind, we are able to move to a different incarnation. We always die at the exact time that we should die. There is no mistake in this sense. We can say that it is perfectly planned, and it is exactly when we have our specific experience has been completely worn out. We have nothing more to learn in this experience, in this specific form. We die for two reasons, except for being very old. One is that we need to replenish. We need to rejuvenate our forces. There is a sort of exhaustion at the end of each lifetime. Second, it is simply because one experience has been completely exhausted, and now it must be replaced with a different experience. Now, when we die, we are always surprised that we are not dead. It's as if we got so used to this to this particular experience, and we were completely sure that this is who we were. And then at a certain point, we separate from it, and the story of the soul is realized, because suddenly we are watching the body. Sometimes we're actually watching the dead body. Sometimes we are watching it buried. Sometimes, but not necessarily. Whatever it is, suddenly we realize that we were viewers watching a movie. I don't know, perhaps this is why in near-death experiences they always say that they tend to say that they have their incarnation screened like a movie. But we are watching it, and we are experiencing it as a movie, and we realize that we were the viewers, and of course ultimately and more deeply, we are not even the viewers watching, we are the screen that makes the movie, well, screenable. So we are surprised and we are relieved. It is actually a great joy, and it is very difficult to understand at that point why we would take any other form. The level of freedom, the level, and the richness of the aliveness of our experience as a soul is so overwhelming that we don't really want to reincarnate. It makes absolutely no sense. It is profound happiness. Add to that the fact that when we are moving to what we can call the in-between, just the period which for most unconscious souls, unconscious humans is extremely brief and uncontrollable. For mature souls, it is controlled, and they can actually navigate in it. But when we move to the in-between, what we realize is that what awaits us there is complete, uncontainable love. And this uncontainable love is the hidden source of the entire journey of the soul. And when we are touched by it, this is one of the reasons that we must die and we must go through the in-between just before we reincarnate. It's the replenishing of our forces is also through the inspiration of realizing what lies, what hides behind the entire journey. It is not just uncontainable love. Once we are touched by it, we realize the unimaginable degree of forgiveness. Because perhaps we are feeling while we are alive that we are unable to forgive ourselves, to forgive our faults, to forgive our mistakes. But when we are touched, when we are inspired by this communion with the source, the hidden source of the journey, we realize that we are instantly forgiven, and not because there was really a sin and forgiving our sins, but that it is completely forgivable since the human journey is meant to be exactly like that. That it is meant to be confusing, disorienting, difficult, and that we are meant to make human mistakes. At the same time that we are forgiven so profoundly, we also are able to forgive all others, because we're realizing from this perspective that it is all forgivable. At that moment, there is a realization that even in the cruelest points of the human journey, even these points are saturated in love. That it is encompassed by this divine love, divine wish. Yes, it is clear from this perspective that to live a human life means to struggle. But at the same time, you realize that the struggle is the purpose. The struggle is the learning. And you realize that learning is love. So that's completely encouraging. Again, sometimes in near-death experiences, they tell about the shocking communion with this source of love, that suddenly, and it is always described as an unimaginable type of love, because it is unlike anything. It is like drowning in an ocean, being saturated in an ocean that wipes away any pain, any suffering. But then we realize that we are meant to return. We are meant to return because, and this is the interesting thing, we are meant to return, now I remember. We are meant to return not because there is some guiding hand that tells us, really, now you must go on your mission, and it's not like that. It is actually quite a sort of an automatic pilot, the way it works. It works by the very force of our very own desire, our very own wish to experience. It is this wish is enkindled within us, and it wouldn't cease until we feel complete satisfaction and complete and a wish for return that is much stronger than the wish for experience, you see? So yes, of course there is our limited ability as a soul cannot, let's say, I don't know, prepare the conditions for our rebirth, know exactly where to go and so on and so on, but the very reincarnation, the very process is actually our own wish. And it's very important to understand that we are not forcefully kicked into reincarnation. And now we need to understand that with our wish to experience, there comes a heavy price. And this is the point where we meet for this weekend. Because you may not remember, while being in the human form, so vividly, so powerfully what I'm just describing. You see? When you go deeply enough in your meditation, you simply move through the passage of death. You realize that it is just a transparent gate. You move, and then you are able to know exactly that. But what we need to understand that is with every single incarnation, there is the law of self-forgetfulness. The law of self-forgetfulness says that you must forget everything about being a soul. And why is that? It is because you must identify fully with your experience. You must give everything you've got. Imagine that if you kept remembering that this is just a movie, you wouldn't be so fully invested in it, not fully learning from unity with the flesh. There would be a sort of a detachment, uncaring element. And then how could you experience the pain of love? How could you experience attachment and loss? It would mean nothing. It would be just like being in the in-between. Our ultimate purpose is to be able to, while being in a human form, to remember fully. And that basically means that mature souls are able to live the in-between while they are alive, you see? They have full memory. When they die with a big smile. It's, oh, okay, now I'm separating from the role that I played. For them, everything, the entire thing was a play. The entire personality and the perspective of this personality and the ideology this personality cherished and the relationships that it cultivated, everything is just a thing they experienced. And therefore they live this, they depart from this lifetime with a big smile. But for the majority of souls incarnating, and this becomes especially clear in human form, because the human form is a sort of a strange, complex situation, that it has a part that is detached, or that is observing its own journey and the experience. So it's a very complex experience. But so for the majority of humans, they have to forget everything. The memory is wiped away for them to be able to give everything they've got. To be completely devoted to that experience. Which means, of course, that it is a heavy price. A heavy price because you must let go of the sheer joy of being a soul for the sake of happiness that is quite problematic. It is human happiness, which depends completely on a fluctuating experience, on a changing experience. So that's quite a loss. But then there is the gift of learning. So this is the law of self-forgetfulness. It basically says you must forget completely who you are for you to eventually remember who you are. There has to be the process of self-forgetfulness. And we will talk throughout the weekend about how we are, every now and then we get hints, we get reminders throughout our lifetime. Because our doubting mind is much stronger and the forgetfulness is so tremendous that the mind always wins. And makes everything we've just talked about very unbelievable. But we must forget in order to be able to be completely identified, and then we must be completely identified in order to eventually be able to recall. That's basically the journey.